Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sarah, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode with my co-host, Carrie Bennett. We are really enjoying giving you this show and talking about these topics that seem really complex so that we can help them be a little bit more understandable to the everyday person. I just wanted to remind you to head down into the show notes to make sure you get my free resources and Carrie's free resources. We've both spent a lot of time compiling our favorite list of products, as well as how you can actually implement a lot of these things into your daily life for free using our guides. We also both have amazing courses that you have access to in the show notes as well. And we co-host a course together called Quantum Fertility. We've actually had some quantum fertility babies just born this summer, and we have several quantum fertility pregnancies going on right now where women were told that they were not going to get pregnant, and we have been able to show them the way using these circadian principles and quantum biology, and we're so grateful for this. So make sure you head down to the show notes, check out those resources, check out those courses. And if you are enjoying the show, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave us a comment. And if you're listening on the podcast app, please head on over to Apple or Spotify, leave us up to a 5-star review. Since we are such a brand new show, we want to make sure that we're getting this message out to as many people as possible. Again, we want to make these concepts of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable and applicable to the everyday person. We want you to pull up a chair, come hang out, and enjoy this conversation with me and Carrie, and have a fantastic day. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about labs. Super hot topic these days. So thanks for being here, Carrie. Let's take it away.
Oh yeah, this is an interesting topic for sure. And I think our perspective, I think what's important to share is that we're coming at this both as our own patients, right? We were a patient at some point and going through this idea of what's happening with my body. And, I took a stool test. I did copious blood work. I spit into test tubes. I cut hair chunks out, right? I did all the things in search of what I thought. I wanted to find what was wrong with me. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so we get it, right? We understand. And so we're not knocking you as a patient and your drive to solve a problem and find a solution, I want to give you kudos, because oftentimes if it's not you, it's hard to find a practitioner these days. They're few and far between that can really truly sit down with you and walk you through it. So I get that you're on this mission. So we want to first preface this by saying that. Yeah. But I also want to share with everyone, and I think you can share with this as well, Sarah, both from my perspective as my own patient, but also seeing so many clients spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars of labs, and actually oftentimes the practitioner was never even able to interpret them and with anything other than take these 30 supplements, right?
Right.
And so is that really a solution? I didn't find it to be so myself, and I haven't found any client to find that to be a permanent solution.
Yeah. And I think it's number one, like you mentioned, to get someone to do blood work for you through allopathic medicine can be like so frustrating. Just when you see your regular doctor, like, I want to run these labs, and they're like, well, why? And like, you don't necessarily need those. And that you have to beg, borrow, and steal to just get like a comprehensive metabolic panel. Like, it's some basic stuff. Or a thyroid, you ask for thyroid panel and they just run your TSH. And like, just it's difficult to get a standard doctor to run them. And then a lot of times you don't necessarily see a ton of stuff wrong with those. And so you're like, I know something's wrong. And so then you go this functional medicine route where it's like overkill, right? Like, pee in this container, poop in that container, spit in this container. And then we're going to like take both your arms and take about 30 vials out. And then, and then you get all these reports back and you're like, oh, I'm really effed up. Like, and now what do I do? And it's like, hey, here's your supplement list for this is wrong. And this is wrong. And then it's like, you don't think about how much your body has to go through to actually handle all those supplements, like you're number one, a lot of those are super high in deuterium. So that's an issue for the mitochondria. Number two, your liver can become extremely overburdened by taking 30 different supplements. And so like, I get the conundrum that people are in. I've been there. You've been there, been dealing with it with my daughter over the last year. That's a whole other story. I hope to have a positive spin on in 2024, but, it's fair. It's ridiculously frustrating. So it's like, what the heck do people do in this situation? Right.
Yeah. And so that's exactly it. Right. And so what I think I'd love to share with people today is like, okay, let's maybe break it down test by test. Like, what blood work have we found useful? Markers, what about maybe some other functional tests have we found useful? And what about when we have these other tests that test a whole bunch of different metabolites? What would we key in on? And, how would we maybe approach healing? And I need to let everyone know, I've said this in my private community a lot. I've said this in my practitioner mentorship program. It's like, I track symptoms, but I don't treat symptoms. I treat a terrain. I view the body as its own environment, its own ecosystem, both internal environment and the environment that surrounds it. And typically, if someone is experiencing symptoms, it's because something is off in the terrain. It's not necessarily a broken part that needs to be fixed, or a genetic pathway SNP that needs lots of this nutrient to support it. It's like there's something wrong in the entirety of the terrain. So I always say, track the symptoms, because it's always encouraging to see symptom improvement, right? Even if it's small little improvements. But I don't treat the symptom, I treat the terrain. And so what I'm looking for is first the lens of the quantum terrain. What are we looking for? What type of testing can we do that assesses one's circadian rhythm and one's leptin, right? Those are some key things that I think would be those are by far the first things that I start with if someone has the ability to do some form of lab work. And so should we start with the blood? Because that's where we test leptin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good place to start.
Okay. Yeah, so go for it. Yeah. So let's tell everyone. So yeah, that's it. That end of the episode. Bye. So with leptin, we've talked all about leptin in previous episodes, so we don't have to go into detail about it, but pretty much, Sarah, and I want you can kind of do your leptin nerd out with this. Leptin tells the body, leptin's ability to communicate in the body, gives the body an idea of how much energy it has. Which
it's like
influences,
an accountant, right?
Exactly.
It's giving a report of what's stored body fat as well as stored sugar on the body. And if that is dysfunctional, then all the other things like your thyroid, sex hormones, all those things are going to be impacted. And
the body goes in hunker down mode. If the communication isn't happening, or the number's out of range, and we can talk a little bit about that, then the body it goes into hunker down mode. It goes into, nope, we don't know if we have enough energy in reserve to dedicate to fertility purposes or to increasing metabolic activity. Right. So we're going to hunker down.
Yep.
And so that's why we look at metabolically. I will look at leptin any day before I look at a thyroid hormone cascade.
Totally. 100%. And the thing is, I did a live stream on this it'll be a couple weeks ago when this comes out, but I said, hey, if you really want the science behind this, go to PubMed, type in leptin and infertility, type in leptin and PCOS, type in leptin and hot flashes, it's there. There's a ridiculous leptin and thyroid disorders. Just boom, 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 study after study after study. Not that you and I are like, we have to have a study for everything, because we really don't. But if people want that empirical data, it is there. And so that is, again, why instead of having someone go get massive amount of these other markers, a 12 to 14 hour fasted blood serum leptin. Again, none of this is medical advice in this show, but that is the marker that I have people to look at. And I like, morning time for that to happen. You don't want to fast too long, because that can make the number a little bit lower than it should be, or too little. I've had people eat. I ate a ham and cheese croissant before I went to get my leptin drawn, and my number was 50. I'm like, because you ate a ham and cheese croissant before your blood draw. It's got to be
That's important though.
Yeah.
That's important because with leptin, I have had many clients say that, oh, but I wasn't told that I had to do this fasted.
Right. Because their doctor won't tell them to do it fasted because they don't understand it.
Right. And so it does. From our clinical perspective, if you want to assess leptin, it has to be in a fasted state, like Sarah said, 12 to 14 hours, or first thing in the morning, ideally.
Yep, exactly. And then the range we like for women, again, not medical advice by any means, between 7 and 10. I see that as being a really good sweet spot for optimizing things. For men, it's usually a bit lower, like between a 0 and a 4, 1 and a 4.
1 and a 4,
yeah, is typically a good range for people. Again, not medical advice, but that's a marker to start with.
It's a blood marker that actually is useful, I think, for a lot of people to track, because I've had clients start with a leptin of 72 and then do some improvements, and then now their leptin is a 47, right? And that's the other thing that I think is important. It's never the absolute number. I always see how things are trending,
improving. Yeah,
if things are trending, if a woman's leptin was a 1.7 and then she retests it and now it's a 3.8, even though it's not in range, it's moving in the right direction. Stay the course.
Right.
Anytime you can get leptin to move into range, the body starts to get better communication about its energy reserves. It goes out of that hunker down mode and is then can start to give energy to increase thyroid metabolic function, increased fertility, optimizing those hormones and things like that. So it's not always like, oh, you must, okay, unless you're in 7 to 10, you're screwed. It's like, no, it's how is it trending?
Right. And then here's the other thing. On the rare occasion, this isn't often, but it's a rare occasion, I have somebody in my group, they're like, well, my leptin is an 8, but I still have going on. And I'm like, well, it's great. This is really good. But sometimes the blood work is not going to show absolutely everything. And blood work is not going to show what's going on with your mitochondria. So you might have some other issues going on. And then sometimes what's on labs doesn't represent actually what's going on in the body. So maybe we can address that just a little bit. Again, it's very rare that I see this, but it does happen every now and then, right?
It does. A really interesting research that I read a while ago now, probably 15 years ago, was you could take someone's TSH at 3 different times throughout, even over the course of the morning, right? Like 3 times in a row. And it could be very, very different because again, we're looking at a snapshot of one marker or maybe a couple of markers in time in your body. And we're not a closed system that stays in. We're continually responding to what's happening inside of the body and outside in our environment, and the body changes and fluctuates things in response to that. So it's why I could get my cortisol tested right, let's say first thing this morning, I get my cortisol tested, and then all of a sudden on the way home from getting that draw, let's say I did a blood draw for cortisol, which is not as accurate, but on the way home, let's say I witnessed a car accident, and if I were to get my cortisol tested then, it'd be 2 completely different things, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Or I drank coffee. I mean, on one day versus not drinking coffee on an empty stomach, 2 completely different numbers. So we love the fact that our bodies are continually responding to our environment, which is why I think you've heard the message time and time again that we do not use markers of blood, especially blood markers, as the sole means of assessing how you're doing and what's happening in your body.
No, not at all. I'm much more somebody that is like, how do you feel? How are you sleeping? How is your energy? How's your appetite? Like these things are much more important to me than like going through stacks and stacks of labs and looking at things, right? Because typically if somebody does have a major issue going on, they are going to have sleep issues. They are going to have energy issues. They are going to have like major symptoms that are going to say, yeah, there is a problem here, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time they're going to be having some sort of a symptom. Now, yeah, I think it can be helpful to get, markers run at your yearly doctor's appointment if that's something that you want to do, just to check in. I don't have a problem with that. But what I am having a problem with is people going out and spending like, $10,000, this not even an understatement, $10,000 on labs and consultations and supplements and things like that, and not ending up
any better, and that's what's been super frustrating for me as a patient, but also as somebody that is trying to help people. And they come to me with these, like all these labs, and they're like, I'm not feeling better. What do I do with all this information? And I'm like,
right.
yeah,
I know. It's
yeah.
It's such a tough one, because I really truly believe that all these practitioners are
They
well
wanna
intentioned.
help.
I don't think
I
they're
do.
swindling anybody. I just think that through my clinical experience, your clinical experience, our personal, how our personal bodies have responded to what we teach, is that there's an order of operations that has to happen. Meaning, sure, your detoxification pathways may be compromised and you may have a heavy metal burden in your body.
Right.
But guess what?
But
Even if you have a heavy metal burden in your body, and that can be tested in different ways, right? There's ways to assess, metal status in the body. So even if you have that, my initial way that I support you is going to be the same. Is your circadian rhythm intact? And we can talk about what that test could look like if you want to test it. Is your leptin in like functioning, right? Are you communicating with leptin? Are you hydrated? Are you sleeping? So like there's so many foundational things. So there is an order of operations. And if I were to take someone and push them through an intense detoxification protocol because they've got heavy metals that I think are causing their symptoms before I set this foundation, it's not going to work.
Not going to work.
It's not going to work.
No.
And so,
and you were talking to me a little bit. We're both doing Dr. Cowan's new biology clinic right now, and I'm behind because I've had some family stuff going on. But you were talking a little bit about a module that you did previously where they actually said that Lyme, mold, all of these things typically are going to show up in somebody that have an unhealthy terrain, right? Because this is the big thing on social media right now. Everyone's got Lyme, everyone's got mold, everyone's got parasites. Yeah, but why? And like, is killing all this stuff the answer to fixing the person, or is it fixing their terrain? Right? Like,
exactly. That it's this idea of if I were to see dead, decaying matter in the wilderness, what comes to it? Different scavengers, right?
Yes.
That help to clean up and reintegrate maybe some nutrients back into the soil. Maybe some of the things are going to just help to break stuff down. That's the same process that's happening in the body. It's the fact that you will have fungal infections, mycotoxins, spirochetes, all of these things can actually, they're pleomorphic. They can actually be in your body in spite of not having a tick bite or things like that, right? They're pleomorphic things that can be generated by the body in order to clean up damaged tissue. Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, if there's firefighters at the scene of the fire, right? Right. But these firefighters are at the scene of the fire. And then all of a sudden I say, oh no, these firefighters must have caused this fire. So I'm going to clear them out. The fire goes unchecked. Right. So, and occasionally that results in temporary symptoms suppression because inflammation, a lot of inflammation, and like, you can temporarily provide a bit of a symptom relief, but long-term you've done nothing to really support the terrain. And so by the terrain, we mean like, yes, we're looking at the hydration status. We're looking at the mineral status. We're looking at the mitochondria and their ability to essentially make this water that becomes a battery of energy, an ATP that helps the proteins inside of the body do their job. We're looking at the extracellular space, what's happening with the sulfur levels that help to support the extracellular matrix. Is your lymphatic system flowing, right? Are you able to clear stuff as the body gets rid of the stuff or the cells get rid of stuff that no longer serves it? Are you able to clear that through the lymphatic system? What about the fascia? Are there adhesions? Are things that might also be creating blockages in flow and the removal of the body's ability to clear waste? What about blood flow, right? Are you actually able to breathe and pull in oxygen, which is not the only way the body oxygenates? So I do want to put that out there, but are you breathing in a way that facilitates things like even pumping of lymph because your diaphragm can move, right? You're expanding your breath in the right way. All of these things are terrain, in my opinion. These are terrain foundational supports for the body. And if they're not in place, it really makes no sense to go through other intense protocols. And maybe a protocol is needed at some point, right?
Right.
Perhaps you are so overburdened with toxins that you need a heavy sauna protocol, right?
Yep.
Where you are sweating regularly, like, or maybe you
Takasumi binder,
right. Maybe you really need some extra binders. And in fact, guess what? Maybe you are just, your immune system is so challenged right now that you do need a little bit of anti-parasitic support. But that comes down the line. And I hate to tell people that, because they're like, but I know my issue is metals, or I know my issue is parasites. It might be, but if we don't lay this foundation first, if it's not the parasites, another thing is going to show up in its place to help to tend to the terrain that we're not tending to ourselves.
Yep, exactly. That's the thing it's crazy that I'm talking to, I'm having my own situation with my daughter right now, which again, hopefully 2024 will have a better story to tell on this one. But I'm talking with some functional practitioners now that are still treating patients in this way of the detox and this protocol and that. And they are up to their eyeballs with people who are not getting better. Like, they're not getting better. I just talked with a good friend of mine. I'm not going to mention her name, but she's a really good friend of mine that does this functional medicine thing for a living, has a huge social media following, and she's like, I can't practice anymore. I'm so burned out from these people are so sick. She's like, it's like your daughter, like, is everyone right now, with all and I'm like, yeah, that's why we're not doing functional medicine for my daughter, because it's a waste of money and it's a dead end. And I know it's not going to be what ultimately helps her. We tried it, and so it's not that people aren't trying this and they're not doing the things. It's just that they're not addressing the terrain. They're not addressing, like, why is the system overburdened with these things? Because I've talking with Dr. Catherine Clinton when I had her on, she says she's never tested somebody that was really sick that didn't have Lyme. Everybody had Lyme. And so is it real, and I know this probably is going to upset some people out there. We're not trying to put this information out there to upset anyone. What we want to do is talk to those people who are in that situation and let them know there's a different way that they could be dealing with these things, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Right. And so the next test then that we think that if you're interested in the testing route, right, that I have found to be helpful is a salivary cortisol and melatonin panel. And that you can order that from a bunch of different companies these days, right? One of the ways that I have had clients order, at least, in America, and there's, I think, a handful of states that actually don't let you do this, but it's through Direct Labs, New York, New Jersey, directlabs.com. And you look for a panel on it where it's called salivary cortisol and melatonin, or diurnal cortisol and melatonin, but make sure it's a saliva sample. And so what you do with these is you'll basically spit into a test tube 4 times throughout the day, and they'll map out how much cortisol you have during those times versus how much melatonin you have during those times. And what we want to see is a cortisol surge in the morning hours and have it drop off at night, and then a slow increase of melatonin towards the evening with a surge in the middle of the night that drops off pretty sharply towards daybreak. If we see those humps, those curves, those peaks, then we know that your circadian signaling is strong. Because remember, so many processes in the body are dependent on timing and circadian timing. And the hormone chemical signatures of that timing are melatonin and cortisol, right? Cortisol in the morning, melatonin in the evening. But 9 times out of 10, if I have that test from someone, I will almost always see either cortisol that's low-ish in the morning and then elevated all at the wrong times of the day. I'll see it flatline during the day and then only elevated in the evening, or else, and in conjunction, I'll oftentimes see melatonin very, very suppressed or phase delayed. Like all of a sudden melatonin is suppressed. And then this person has symptoms of insomnia or, anxiety at night, insomnia, wired but tired feeling at night, and then all of this, they can't go to bed, but when they finally do, that's when true darkness hits them. They're not staring at a screen, and then melatonin surges from 4 to 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's why they can't get out of bed. Right.
Exactly. Yep.
And so common patterns, it's helpful. Like these are common patterns we've seen. And that test can be helpful as well if you want to use an assessment. And again, there's a lot of different options. But I prefer salivary hormone testing, and I want 4 samples throughout the day where they sample and they test both cortisol and melatonin, so you can see where those curves are throughout the course of 24 hours for you. Exactly. Sometimes you'll get DHEA with that one as well.
Yeah. And why don't you like the urine test for this? I'm just curious. Because I know a lot of people will say, I've got the Dutch test and the Dutch test shows my cortisol, melatonin. Why do you think the salivary is more accurate?
I don't necessarily think it's more accurate. The Dutch test gives a lot of information. I just think if you're looking to support yourself, because there's only so many practitioners that are going to interpret this, right? So if you're the number of people who have self-ordered a Dutch test and then been like,
what do I do with all this information?
Right. It's a ton of information. So the reason I think leptin is cut and dry. Here's your number. I think when you see the curves on these salivary panels, it's very helpful. Oh, this is what my cortisol does, right? Okay, this is where it's out of range. Okay, this is where my melatonin does. And guess what? If your cortisol and melatonin are out of range, either high or low in any way across the board, it means you would benefit from working on circadian support strategies.
Yep. Exactly. Simple as that. And it's not like we are going to give you a list of supplements to take.
I'm going to make you buy some blue blockers.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather you buy a pair of blue blockers than go and spend a bunch of money on, ashwagandha or L-theanine, not that those are like evil bad or anything like that. But just do this first, because I've had,
I mean, can I talk about those really, really quickly?
Please.
They're beautiful herbs, but they were discovered and utilized thousands upon thousands of years ago when one couldn't help but have a circadian rhythm. So it was that was something that wasn't even a thing. Circadian rhythm dysfunction wasn't a thing like thousands of years ago, right? And so, yes, when someone had a little bit of extra stress in their life because maybe a death or whatever, maybe an illness, something, right? Then those adaptogens can come in play, and they can really be supportive and nourishing and help to balance out those levels. But those adaptogens were never designed to work in the type of circadian dysfunction that we have these days.
No,
you can't take enough of them to overcome this if your circadian signaling is off.
And I've had so many people, because I did a post on ashwagandha a couple weeks ago, and I had a lot of people like mad at me. Anyone gets mad if I try to.
You are so brave with your social media.
People just get mad. I'm like, it's just a post, you guys. It's not like and you could do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just putting out information. But the amount of people that actually said, hey, I took ashwagandha and it like totally screwed me up. Like, I was shocked at how many people were commenting that it messed them up worse, and it gave them a whole bunch of other symptoms. And I'm like, they were like, you're totally right on here. I wasn't working on circadian rhythms, didn't even know what blue blockers were. I was just told your cortisol patterns are all screwed up, take some ashwagandha. And not only did it not help, it actually made things worse for me. And so, anytime that you ingest something, there is a possible reaction, and everyone's going to react differently. I've learned that again over the years of being on social media, and at different points saying, having different supplements of, companies reach out to me and try them and then promote them. And then the emails and the messages I get from people who are like, I tried this and my hair fell out. I'm like, well, that's not even a side effect that's listed. Like, oh my gosh, when you work with a large sample size of people, you just really don't know what kind of reaction people are going to have to these different supplements. My daughter is like a pure example of like, you give her a supplement and they're like, I didn't even know that was a side effect. Like, somebody said she needed to take DCI for blood sugar management, and that it would be a great thing for her hormones. Poor kid broke out in full body hives every time she took the DCI. And I'm like, I asked the practitioner, the functional doctor who recommended this, I said, she's got full body hives. Oh, that's not the DCI. I'm like, the heck is that? That's the only thing I gave her. I know.
I mean, hives are pretty, I mean, you take it, you get the hives.
It's not the took it away. Guess what went away? Hives.
The hives.
So, it's just like, you just don't know with a lot of this stuff. I'm so cautious now with recommending things. I've been burned before,
for sure. Yeah.
And seeing how things can really go awry for people.
My thing with supplements, totally. I totally get, there's absolutely is such bio individuality. But what I find also to be really key when I see a paradoxical reaction to a supplement, that's nervous system. It's the nervous system, right?
Yes.
The nervous system views everything or a lot of things as a threat, even if it's a blend that's quote unquote designed to help support this pathway. And so I do look to nervous system. That's one of my signals for sure.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. If that person who is like, here's a supplement that's supposed to make you
help you go to sleep, right?
And then they're like wired all night, and you're like, what? Because the nervous system is seeing it as a threat.
Yep. Okay. For me, it's nervous. That's a big cue. That's been something I've seen time and time again across, and that's been especially true these past 3 years. Everyone's nervous system, regardless, has been on the fritz. Yeah. And so, I see that paradoxical reaction so much more.
So what we're saying is like, here's some free stuff that you can do.
Yeah. And then even before you supplement, work on your nervous system. Let's go see Irene.
Call up our buddy Irene. Irene Lyon, go check out all of her stuff. Get working. Yeah, I think that's really, really foundational for people. And that is something with my daughter that we've kind of been working on, is like the nervous system and functional neurology and looking at that. And again, it doesn't involve nutraceuticals because she reacts so strongly to those things that, looking at rewiring the nervous, or supporting the nervous system,
supporting it for sure,
is vital for many, many, many people. And the circadian practices, in my opinion, are very supportive of helping to support the nervous system, because you get that morning sunlight, neurotransmitter support. I feel so much calmer when I'm grounding, when I have that
grounding in nature.
Yep. Being around sources of infrared, red light therapy, firelight, candlelight, super soothing and very supportive of the nervous system. So, and so much less expensive than a huge protocol. So yeah.
Again, terrain. This is the terrain stuff that we're talking about, right? I've just seen it too many times, where well-intentioned people, patients, clients, practitioners really just go through a lot without tending to what I consider to be some really foundational stuff. Another one, and this isn't a test that you get, a functional test that you get done, but I assess almost everyone's BOLT score.
Oh yeah, you're good at this one.
It's your blood oxygen level test. And I'm not going to, should I take them through it now? You can Google or you can YouTube BOLT score, right? So that's something that I learned from Patrick McEwen, who wrote the book, The Oxygen Advantage. But it's very helpful to use with every single client, because basically what it assesses is one's carbon dioxide tolerance. And if their BOLT number is low, really low, it's a prime indication to me that's part of their breathing mechanics throughout the day, whether it's at night when they're sleeping, whether it's just during the day, whether it's when they're checking emails, but something is off about their breathing mechanics. And typically what's off about their breathing mechanics is either they're a mouth breather, or they're an accessory breather, right? They breathe through their shoulders, combination thereof. Maybe they've worn a mask through work over the course of the past 3 years. That has created a lot of dysfunctional breathing patterns. But when you can't build your carbon dioxide tolerance up to a certain threshold in your bloodstream, and you feel the need to breathe really fast as soon as carbon dioxide elevates just a little bit, you're more likely to it drives anxiety. That's a stress response, right? So you're way more heightened in terms of your stress response. Your sleep is a lot lighter. And again, your nervous system is on high alert because that drives something called a pattern called over breathing. So if I feel like as soon as I'm holding my breath and carbon dioxide builds up just to this amount, and then I need to breathe again, that's called an over breathing. I'm breathing very, very frequently. When in nature would I be breathing very frequently? If I was being chased by a flippin' saber-toothed tiger, right? If my life was at stake, if there was a threat to my survival, And so then I'm always in that heightened alert state, right? I'm always kind of waiting for the intruder, the attacker, whatever it might be. And so again, foundational step to really work on with people beyond, that before you supplement, right? And if you want to do a test, very useful test to know what your breathing mechanics could be.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's absolutely huge. Just, it's one thing people can do to assess themselves to see where they're at. And maybe we can talk a little bit about some of these, like people getting a Dutch test and seeing like, I've got low DHEA, I've got low this, I've got low that. Like, what do I do? Because that's a mistake I made at one point, was being told I had low DHEA, taking DHEA, and I wasn't even taking large amounts of it, but I was taking it daily because I was told to. And then my levels went completely off the charts. My testosterone went completely off the charts. Didn't feel so great. So
no, totally. So, I've had, again, inter-individual variability. I've had one client over the course of the decades respond well to DHEA. One, right? But the number of clients who came and tested that their DHEA was low and they were told supplement. I was too. I think that's
just what they tell you.
I was on a lot of DHEA and it didn't feel any better. So with a Dutch test or any of those tests where there's extra information, what I look to next is I look to how are you metabolizing your hormones?
Yeah.
So a Dutch test is really interesting to look for, like, how are you metabolizing your estrogen? Because that tells you a lot about your liver and those pathways, those kind of detoxification and elimination pathways. And so for me, again, if I saw something like the estrogen levels were off, that's where I say, oh, let's see, does Carrie also have any other symptoms of needing liver support?
Yes.
What could that look like? Oh, you have a bunch of chemical sensitivities, or exhaust fume knocks you out you get a migraine, or you feel really brain foggy when you go into an office that has new furniture, or your bowel movements are impaired, right? You're not pooping regularly. If you're not pooping, the toxins aren't also leaving your body. So like I look to support drainage pathways in that aspect. A lot of times liver is one of them, liver colon right there. And so that's just another layer right there that I look to, but I don't see it and say, you need DIM, right?
Yeah.
Now, maybe if there are some people out there who have a history of estrogen sensitive, estrogen positive breast cancers and things like, is DIM the worst thing in the world? No, it's not. But is it the solution?
Right.
I don't think so.
We don't want anyone to, is like, this is going to fix everything for me, because
something's off in your terrain, in your liver terrain, in your elimination terrain. And that's where you have to kind of do some support. And I don't think people I think I made this assumption. I was actually having a conversation behind the scenes with Zeb from Clearly about this.
His liver stuff.
And I was just like, I had a yearly practice of regular supports. Like every year I'll do a couple forms of fasting. Every year I will do something that I know supports my colon, like a deep colon support, a deep liver support. Like these are practices that have been around for like thousands of years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so my assumption was kind of like everyone kind of knew about these ancient self-care strategies, that it was just assumed, every year you're going to do some intense sweating or whatever it might be. And I don't think that's the case. Right. And so I think
people are not sweating at all these days.
Or if they sweat, they feel toxic.
Feel bad. Yeah, exactly.
And so I just kind of want to put it out there that I think there's yearly support that the body needs to go through. I think Ayurveda does a beautiful job of this, right? In terms of it's spring, this is what we're tending to, it's summer, this is what we're tending to. And traditional Chinese medicine also has a kind of a similar flow to it. In modern living, where we don't really recognize or acknowledge the differences in seasons, except to say, I hate when it's freezing cold, or I hate when it's so hot and humid. Like we acknowledge how much we despise certain aspects of the season. We don't realize that with it can come an opportunity to cleanse or support or improve the function of various aspects of our organs and our physiology.
Exactly.
That's a whole other topic though in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. Maybe we should talk about that next time.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that might be a course. I don't know. So that being said, so we've got leptin, we've got the salivary cortisol and melatonin. You can do a Bolt score. If you see measures of hormone imbalance, otherwise, I always look to liver support, right? Liver, especially that bile pathway, that elimination is your colon eliminating. And that's true too of thyroid, right? If your thyroid is off, I don't go directly to supporting the thyroid. It's all of these things, right? Same thing with like my adrenal fatigue course, same thing. I talk about adaptogens and things like that, the very last. Like module number 6, right? It's a tiny, tiny module because I want to see all of these other things in place first. Let me think. Stool tests, right? I'm not a fan of stool tests, especially if you're looking to assess your microbiome, because I think, as you've heard Sarah and I say many times, it changes all the time from day to midday to night, before this meal, after that meal, this season to that season. So I don't find it to be a very useful marker at all. And so then when you try to go and kill whatever bad guys might be in there, again, never seen good results with that.
No. It can be interesting to see what your digestive enzymes look like.
Totally.
But you don't necessarily need a stool test to do that. Like, you could just try to eat some fat. And if it doesn't work, you have low lipase more than likely. Right. Digestive enzymes are one supplement that I'm like, I'm okay with that, or HCl. Those are supplements that I'm kind of like, temporarily that can really help people. But you don't necessarily need a stool test. You can assess that through a stool test, but
fecal elastase through a stool test is the marker that can really help you look at things like your pancreatic enzymes. But listen, like you said, if you're experiencing weird stools, like you can't digest fat, if you have any bloating whatsoever, if you have any constipation whatsoever, and if you get, if you feel like you're digesting your food, eat something and your food just sits in your stomach, you need digestive support, right? That there's stuff. And then I don't know, Sarah, I'm so old school, but like, I don't mind HCl and enzymes, like you said, as a temporary relief. But like, I think, but like what we lead into with that is, how many people take the time to eat a meal and only eat a meal? And I'm guilty, right? Like,
totally,
do you know,
totally.
the majority of my meals, I try to sit down at the table or outside and take some time for just the meal, have a conversation with my husband, right? My kids, but that's something that's missing, right? And so I think even before, again, that's why we say the HCl and the enzymes, it's temporary, because are you setting time aside for a meal? Are you smelling your food, looking at your food, chewing your food, right? Yep. Digestion starts even before the food gets in your mouth with all of this cephalic phase, brain-based digestion. And when we start to optimize that,
if people are getting takeout all the time, there's this whole thing that happens when you're preparing a meal, you're chopping it, like your digestive system. Yeah. Your digestive
You get hungry.
system,
you're like, oh yeah, but saliva.
it's all happening. And that's all meant to help you digest your food. And I think that's missing in our modern life, is everyone, you get, and I, every now and then I'll splurge and get something delivered. God forbid. It's maybe like a once a month thing that it's kind of a fun thing to do, but
sure, absolutely.
You're not going to rebuild those supports if you're not taking time out to eat properly. So that's huge.
Oh, another test that you can do at home. These are fun. I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, I find these tests so much more useful clinically than all the other labs I see.
Yeah.
Take a bite of food. Count how many times you chew it before you want to swallow.
Oh.
Right? When I had my worst digestive issues, like when I was in the throes of all that pain, my desire to swallow, your DTS, my DTS, we'll give it a marker, a clinical marker. My DTS was a 5.
Wow. Okay.
So like, I was literally taking a bite of, like, let's say steak, right? And chewing it 5 times and then swallowing it. Oh, and then I was like, okay, stomach acid, now your turn.
Do your thing.
No wonder I couldn't digest anything, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, figure out what your DTS is, and then I'm such a nerd. And then, but then like ask yourself, like legitimately chew your food 30 to 50 times, chew it until it's mush, 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 mush. Take the work away from your digestive system. And so that's another very interesting thing that you can do that doesn't cost you any money, and you can track it regularly and it doesn't cost you any money. And it's very, very useful in setting the terrain that we call your digestive process.
Yeah, 110%. And I think we should talk a little bit about, I do have to go in about 10 minutes here, but I do think we should talk a little bit about how we see and how I've seen people that improve symptoms, they feel better. Because I see this a lot in my community. I know you do too. They're like sleeping through the night for the first time. I've lost weight. My skin.
I wake up with energy.
I wake up with energy. My skin looks great. Oh my gosh, I feel 20 years younger.
I poop every day.
Right. All the things. But I just got these labs back and look how horrendous they are. And I'm like, why do you care? Like, so, and it's not necessarily indicating what's going on. If all of this is going on for you and what's on paper, maybe we could talk a little bit about that resonance factor and like how, what you see and what I see.
Yeah, I know. That's a rarer occasion, but I have come across it enough in clinical practice. You're absolutely right. And two things. I don't know. Part of me feels like some of the people who experience that, it's the too good. It's like, I'm in the too good to be true. There's got to be
There's
something.
A catch.
There's a catch. What's still off? Or they feel great, but for longevity purposes, they want to get labs tested regularly. And then something comes up and they're like, but I feel great, but look at how low this marker is.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where the downsides of testing all the time and using a test to determine your health or your longevity, those sorts of things. It's just like, that can be a big time downside for that. I don't know. The other thing too is like, I've seen someone go into a blood test dehydrated.
Oh yeah.
And their markers look like garbage. And then it's like, is it my kidneys? Is it my immune system? And it's like, no, it's just because you didn't drink enough water yesterday or the morning that, that you had the test, but like you get into like freak out mode then and like thinking that something's wrong. And so I don't know. Listen, I've been kicked out of enough doctor's offices that I don't really test anything.
When I was
because back in the day when I still believed in vitamin D blood tests, this was like 20 years ago. I was like, can I get my vitamin D levels tested? And she was like, there's no clinical usefulness. And I was like, she's like, we don't test vitamin D. I was like, well, maybe you were onto something. She just didn't know about it at the time, right? She wasn't the vitamin D bandwagon hadn't started yet.
Shown up yet. Yeah.
Hadn't shown up yet. And so like, she was just like, we're not a good fit. Like, because I want to test my weight.
Wow, that's insane.
I know. But what I'm saying is like, I err on the side of testing less.
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
Sitting with your body more.
My YouTube video, which I have now taken down, I got destroyed by a bunch of vegans back in, it was ugly. Back in 2020, the beginning of 2020, before all the ish hit the fan, I posted a video of my blood work. I didn't know much about blood work because everything looked, what I thought looked really good. My GFR was low. Because I was dehydrated as all heck before that test. And do you know how many vegans literally
you ate too much meat and your kidneys are failing you?
Came for me. These people were coming for me. The videos that they made about me, I'm dying.
Sarah. I'm so sorry.
The video's been taken down, but then it scared the life out of me. Like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. Guess what it was? Dehydration. Kidneys my GFR has been 90 above every time I've tested since then because I'm hydrated.
Perfectly healthy.
But that's a pure example right there of like, it's one marker, it's one snapshot in time. Like it's not the full picture of everything that's going on. And don't freak out. Don't freak out, especially if you are feeling good,
Yeah. And if what you're doing is giving you incremental shifts in the direction you want to head, you have to just really stay the course.
Yes.
As a clinician, one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and it's been hard, is clients come to me, they spend this money, right, for this one-on-one. And it's like, yeah, things are heading in the right direction. And like back in my younger clinician self would have been like, what can we tweak? What can we add? Yeah. What can I get you to do? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing. My more mature, maybe I'll say more mature. I've always got learning to do, but my more mature clinical self says, this is moving your body in the direction that you want to head. Let's stay the course. Right. And it's like, it's hard.
People do that in my private community all the time. They're like, I'm doing this, I'm improving, things are better, but this marker is still not perfect. And why haven't I reversed this? And and it's like, okay, well, I can look at your daily routine. I can look at all these things, but if you're like super optimized, I will always tell you to spend more time in morning light. That's something I will
always tell you to block the artificial light.
Right. I'm always going to tell you that. So if you're not doing those things, I will tell you to do them. But if you're doing all that stuff, if you're having this beautiful morning routine, you're outside barefoot, eating on the grass, whatever, like blocking blue light at night, then yeah, keep going. And if you're improving, then why are you trying to get extra stuff to do? Like you're improving, like keep doing what you're doing. You should continue to see improvements. If something starts to go awry, then we need to have another conversation and look at things. But yeah,
it is. It's like, just stay the course, trust that your body is going through what it needs to do to heal, repair, support, tend to your train. I love that phrase from Catherine Clinton. And then if I do find that if you feel like you're doing everything perfectly and you hit a wall, I always look to nervous system.
Yes. 100%. Yep. Always. Yep. And that's where we got Irene Lyon. Check out her stuff. And she's a good friend of ours. Maybe we'll have her on the show at some point.
We've been talking about her lately, enough that we need her on. Yeah,
I know we do. But yeah, that and please don't stress. Remember our whole episode about stressing and trying to be perfect. That's the biggest issue I see with people in my community is like I need to lose all this weight. How much weight are you trying to lose? 5 pounds. Dude, calm down. Like, I just want to calm down. 5 pounds. And you're the only one who notices it. And it's probably not even going to look good if you do lose it. Like, just stop.
It's like you're ruining your mental health, or you're hurting, you're impairing, you're taking energy away from other things, focusing on this one data point, this one thing.
I used to be that way. I used to do that. I look at old photos of myself and I thought at the time that I had all this weight to lose, and I'm like a size 2. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, you do not need to lose any weight, you know? But yeah, people, I think it's a dysregulated nervous system. I think that's a huge part of it. And it's a distraction to maybe take the mind off of some other thing that is not.
So trauma support too is another one. Yeah, that's a real thing as well. Yeah. Right. I do. That's another one that I have seen a really big need for people to be aware of and support the past few years as well, is this trauma. And so there's some beautiful practitioners in that arena as well. You also have to figure out what resonates with you.
Yes.
You may not resonate with every nervous system support practitioner or trauma support practitioner. You might find that one of the things that you're dealing with is called transgenerational trauma, right? It's not has nothing to do with you, but it has something to do with your lineage, right? That's a thing. It might be actually a childhood trauma. And so with trauma, I do find that it's helpful to key in on a practitioner who can support the trauma experience that you've had, but also the modality that they use to help support you and in your energy fields to move and expand through that trauma, so that it no longer really lodges itself in your tissues and causes that resonant vibration that's just disharmonious.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm saying this thing about the woman wanting to lose the 5 pounds and thinking it's the end of the world, like, with compassion. I am not judging you. I'm not like coming down on you. I'm just saying, girlfriend, we might need to look at some of these things that Carrie just mentioned. I've been there. I've worked through a lot of this stuff. I've done that. And I'm no longer the woman that's like looking in the mirror, like, need to lose weight, gonna die if I don't lose this, get to
a little bit of cellulite. Oh, how can I scrub that cellulite off my lip? Right. It's just like,
and fixing with the plastic surgery and all the,
So, I mean, if that's something that you truly feel will support you, by all means, but I also another lesson, and trust me, my husband will be the first to be like, I tell you that I still have a lot of ways to go on this, but simplify.
Yes.
Simplify.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simplify, right? Simplify, like my bookshelf.
Oh gosh.
Like my books are no longer in a shambles, right? I've really simplified, organized, right? Yep. And so it's like, I should have taken a before picture of what my books look like around this place right here.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the thing. I feel like if we could just kind of take a step back and simplify our lives as well, that goes a long way to support so many aspects of health.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I think this has been fun, and we'll have to think of another fun topic for next week, but hopefully this helps people with the lab thing, and
maybe you can sort through it yourself a little bit too, without just like a shot in the dark, like what is this stool test or this oat test or this HTMA say, right.
Like maybe try some of these things first. And then if you're still not getting where you want to go and you've worked on all the other stuff, then sure, maybe check those out. But we like to do things a little less expensive and easier, more simple for people, rather than having you open up your bank account and like hemorrhage. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And it also, as a clinician, and, other clinicians would probably feel this way as well. It helps me hone in if I feel like you do need extra testing.
Right.
It's not just let me see these 7 tests and then I'll get a snapshot of what's going on. It's like, no, let's have a conversation. And then if we want to test leptin and circadian rhythm, that's great. If you're showing symptoms that it needs support, then we're just going to support it without the test.
Right. Exactly.
And then we'll go from there. Right.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you, Carrie. It's been a lot of fun.